Hey folks, this is Omar and welcome you to the day 2 wrap up for our developer days. So good session today, lots of good conversation primarily about sustainability. Certainly a topic near and dear to my heart, and we spent a lot of time talking about sustainability not just from a high level, why is it a good thing, but really got into some details about how you go about building a strategy and understanding the benefits and those kinds of things. One of the key messages this morning was we need data. We need to be able to look at where we're spending money, where we're spending energy, and those kinds of things. And this brings me to Stephen, my first guest for today. So Stephen had a really great session about how to collect information and build some cool dashboards and start developing some use cases for really as the underpinnings for a strategy on how you improve your sustainability stance. So the examples you used, I think, were built primarily around Cisco gear. So the question I had, because I think the one thing I liked about your session was very practical. It's the kind of thing someone could turn around and turn around the next day and start pulling some of that information. So everything you talked about with Cisco gear, in your experience, is there a consistent set of information across vendors? And we don't have to shame anybody, but just in general, do you think most folks will be able to find the information they need regardless of who they're talking to?
Yeah, I mean, in general, we're seeing the same kind of information being available from each vendor, right? And I also briefly mentioned it. We also had a look at compute gear, not only network gear, right? And this is, of course, also multi-vendor. There are a bit more standards there of what we can read reliably, right, in the same manner. And there's mostly temperature and power consumption, right, that are relevant to us. And usually on a level from the power supply of the device itself, right? Be it a server or in terms of network gear, of course, also routers and switches and so on, right? And usually just the protocol or whatever method we use is a bit different depending on the device type. But what we're trying to do is universally applicable to all kinds of computing network devices, right? Out there.
And are routers and switches really the best place to start? Are those the biggest offenders?
Well, I mean, we're Cisco, right?
we can be honest. We're amongst friends.
Yeah. No, but I mean, that's really one important point, right? That we have to figure out. We first have to get some data to figure out where we can start with evaluating where it makes most sense to save power, to save carbon emissions, right? So. You don't have to start with 100%, right? Trying to get information from every single device in your network or in your data center or wherever, right? Mm-hmm. You maybe start selecting some devices. You figure out how to get the data from them, maybe devices of different kinds, and then you quickly see what are the ones that are consuming very much the power and causing the CO2 emissions, right? And then you can give a deeper focus on, okay, this is an area I want to look at. Maybe for me, it's more data center. For a provider, it's more the core network, right? Okay. And then you have a look, you try to find the details that you like, and then you see, okay, this is an area where I can explore, maybe trying to do some optimizations or not.
Okay, so what I'm getting is start small, pick specific things, exactly, learn, yeah, and kind of go from that. So along that front, any tips on the actual strategy for telemetry? How often should you be pulling data? How long do you need to keep longitudinal data before you can make some trends that are that are meaningful?
So, I mean, in general, I briefly touched upon that point earlier, right? Is that we have power sensors in these devices, not energy sensors, right? So if we want to really get a sense of the energy consumption over a given period of time, we need to query these sensors with a relatively small interval, right? Because from a power sensor, we are only reading, okay, my device is consuming about 600 watts or whatever value right now, but it doesn't tell you it consumes so and so many kilowatt hours, and that translated into so and so many grams of CO2 equivalent from the grid power, if you want, right? So what we need to do is basically try to get some devices, query them relatively often, maybe a minute is maybe a good time frame to start, and then see where this leads us to, right? And then we can make some approximations on the energy consumption, and maybe we start tracing that over a week or so, right? Because we have these kind of traffic patterns or in computing, maybe usability, when your service is used, right? Of course, you have, let's have a look at the typical example, right? It's the evening, I want to watch some series on Netflix or some sports, right? And then that's where I'm causing traffic. That's where the services will consume more traffic, more energy, and so on, right? So that's maybe a week is a good start as a pattern. Maybe then you expand it to a month or so. But it's really, in the end, not that many data points that we're looking at if we're just having a look at power consumption on a per device level, right? I mean, in the greater scheme of things, of course.
That makes sense. I mean, to be honest, I'm a little surprised that, at a 1 minute polling interval, I assumed, it's pretty stable over a longer period of time. But I guess what you say makes sense as well.
And that could be a result of your measurements in the end, right? Maybe we can start with 5 minutes or with 10 minutes, and then you see, okay, these values fluctuate very much. Let's go deeper, right? Let's go down to 5 minutes. Let's go down to 1 minute and see if there's many fluctuations. Then it makes sense to have a look at. If there's not many fluctuations, then of course I don't need that data, right? It's just wasting space or wasting or causing me to have to use more compute to analyze it, right? So then I'll go back up, right? I mean, it's with an exploratory process, right? It's not we have a fixed set of things that you need to go through step by step, right? We're really exploring how to go along this story, right? And I mean, as you know, it recently picked up a lot of pace, right? And now we're following along in that matter.
Cool. And that's a good point, right? So there's no right answer. Just draw a line in the sand and adjust based on what your needs are and that kind of thing. So I know you were pressed for time today, and you rolled out a lot of good use cases. Any other favorite use cases you didn't get a chance to cover today?
Yeah, we recently had a project which I find is also something that we could consider, right? We have a stadium in France where we went to, and as a stadium, they have a pretty big Wi-Fi infrastructure, as you can imagine, right? Lots of people going in there want to use WhatsApp or message their friends and family while they're there, or streaming videos even.
Got to share those selfies.
Yeah, exactly. And so they have this Wi-Fi infrastructure. It's running 24/7. And of course, how often is the stadium used? Typically maybe 20, 30 days a year, right? When there's a concert, when there's a big game or big match. So why not turn off most of that infrastructure when it's actually not used? And in that sense, we went there, and my colleague Christina did a lot of work on that, tried to figure out how the Wi-Fi infrastructure worked, and then programmed a way to actually shut down some of these zones in that stadium that are not used, right?
Oh, very cool. That's cool. So I think that wraps up our chat. Thank you, for a great session, and then coming back up here to do the follow-up.
Thank you.
Off to the bar for you. So as we switch out guests, so our YouTube videos and live streams are pretty much structured the same way they were for yesterday. We'll have both the main tent sessions, if you will, today, as well as the... I'm getting surrounded here. As well as in the afternoon, we had separate tracks for, again, service delivery, net DevOps, and then operations. So we'll have those broken out as separate live streams. So now we're gathered here with one of my favorite sessions from today, which was DT and BMAX. BMAX, right? Yeah. So a couple of things. I mean, I really liked it again because I think he just did some amazing things. As I have a bias towards NSO, and it's really cool to see you kind of just use everything that we've built, but then also integrate it into a lot of other tools. And really, we talked earlier, it's as much a system integration exercise as it was anything else. One thing I was kind of curious is what sits on top of this. I mean, what are the systems or tools other lines of business within DT use to actually provision?
Yeah, so overall, it's an upfront orchestrator.
Yeah.
For the BMAX project, we initiated a self-development.
Okay.
So we are using a Spring Boot framework where we do all the automation use cases implement ourselves as an orchestrator. So we do not have any built platform. It's just a Spring Boot framework from Java-based.
Yep.
And on top of that, we implement all the use cases which are orchestrating all the BMAX use cases by our own.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So, not a full-time host, so I actually forgot to introduce my guest. So it's Daniel and Johannes.
Yeah.
And they're here to talk about really what was a really cool, really, like a network controller for bare metal provisioning of network services.
Yeah.
So, one of the things you talked about at the end was keeping folks aligned, and there's a lot of people in there, that were involved in this, which I think is part of what made it successful. But I think all of us struggle with, we have virtual teams of a dozen or more people, and just kind of keeping everyone in lockstep and getting consensus and those kind of things. Can you share a little bit about the, about some of the practicalities of how you do that?
Yeah. So what we talked about in this presentation is we have a lot of different teams. So we have the storage guys, compute, networking. Then we have the cloud environment. What want actually order the bare metal stuff. So what we kind of established is we have a 4-week iteration, and then at the end of each iteration we have an on-site workshop with the key people to kind of discuss, okay, how did this go? Where are we on the feature roadmap? What is going to be next? And that's kind of how we did it. And then, of course, during the iterations, we talk all the time.
Okay.
But during these weeks, we always get some bigger issues, which then we tackle on site, basically.
Yeah.
Talking to people face to face, having a whiteboard, which really helps to think these through.
So it almost sounds like you have an agile sprint structure where you kind
exactly.
of run through that.
Yeah, we used to be an agile team. We're still an agile team. We have agile coaches. We have Scrum Master, and we used our structure within our team and brought it to the other teams a little bit. So everybody is now working such a Scrum mode.
Okay.
So we aligned our sprint lengths to that project 4 weeks, as Johannes mentioned.
Cool, makes sense.
Yep.
So you got a lot of work done in a relatively short amount of time. Any surprises? Were some things that you thought were going to be easy turned out to be complicated, or things that you thought were going to be complicated ended up being easier?
Well, we had a lot of struggle with the actual hardware. So we have seen building up our first lab environments. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of cabling mismatches. That was a surprise.
Always
actually.
layer 1. You can never escape.
It's really layer 0, layer 1 is But we had something in place to check that. So we wrote some services to enable LADP on all devices and just get the data out of the boxes and then compare them to what was planned, and then you can see the diffs or what's not happening or what's not fitting. Otherwise, it went pretty smooth, actually.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the surprising part for me was how different devices are ready for ZTP.
Yes.
So for some devices, it worked really well. For others, we can't do it at all because they don't really. So we are using DHCP, and they don't even work as DHCP client. They spin up their own server once they
breaks
boot
the
up.
whole chain.
So it breaks our whole system. So we have to kind of work around that. So that was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, trust me. So someone on my team is working on ZTP, based on NSO. She's pulling her hair out for the same reasons. It's like, it's a pseudo standard of, okay, we'll call it the same thing and it'll work wildly differently.
Yeah, and what else? I think we made a lot of sorts or spent a lot of sorts up front. So how we can tackle that, we tried a lot, but until now, I think we haven't really lost our path. So I think it's working out pretty good. And also the strategy with the up top orchestrator works pretty good. So how data exchanged until now works good, and we're feeling right. And we are really lucky to have NSO. Otherwise, I think I've seen the other track from the guy trying it with Ansible.
Yes.
Yes, and it ended up. I think we are the lucky guys having NSO, and with that, it's not an easy job, but it's doable.
Yes. I think someone else had a quote is like, okay, it's hard, but it's not, other ways are harder.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
So you look like you met the functional goals. So what comes next? Do you work on scale, resiliency, broader scope?
Yeah, we are not there yet where we want to be. So we have to do some major service refinements. Okay. So that is planned for end of the month. Then we have to work for monitoring stuff. So there's this observability stuff, what we have seen today, gets in focus for us, because when you get somewhere up front on top on the orchestrator, there's a request coming in, and then it's spreading to the server, to the storage, to the network, and somewhere it breaks. You have to bring all together again. So now, how do you do that, right?
Yep.
How can you correlate all the different orchestrators and have an eye on it? And before we are production ready, we have to solve that issue, for example. That's one thing. Then we will turn also into lifecycle, like OS upgrades within a fabric. How do we do that? What is necessary to do it? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that is the hard part with all the different components, is just getting those in sync.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's it for me.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for again, one of my favorite sessions this morning, and thanks for coming up here and
thank
chatting
you
a
for
little bit
having
more.
us. Yep.
Talk to you.
Okay. Bye.
I'll see you down at the bar. Anyone that's watching this is going to think I drink a lot, which actually I don't. But next we're being Tomas from Orange.
Yep. Hello.
Hello. So also another very cool session. It's very highly technical. We talked a lot about your journey from RESTConf to NetConf.
Yes.
So so one of the things, so you talk very much about your implementation of NSO specifically for this environment, for a move towards Sonic and disaggregation. So do you expect to use NSO or orchestration and your tooling across both your disag environment and any traditional switching, or do you see them?
Yes, for sure. That was one of the goals. That's okay. We have the NSO in the ecosystem.
Yep.
We are using it for managing the up to now for the routers, different functionality of the router. But then if we want to now move to this disaggregation environment, we selected the switch, and one of the first questions was can we manage it with the NSO?
Yep.
Because we want to have a unified portfolio that everything is at least what we, as much as we can, manage through the NSO.
Okay, cool. You said one of the next things is doing the same kind of thing for 6Wind.
Yes.
So, do you think it's going to be fairly cookie cutter, or is it kind of a net new effort for you?
This time I hope it will be much simpler and faster, because there is already NetConf implemented in the 6Wind,
Yep.
and based on the first results that we have, it's quite okay. We were able to quickly deploy the service and push it to the 6Wind virtual device. And because of some internal priorities, I was mostly focused as a testing the communication of the NSO and the target OS system,
Yep.
to focus on the Sonic for the last couple of months. But now, as I said in the morning, we now switch to the pilot phase to production. So probably the effort will be a bit more or less, and I can now focus on the 6Wind to help the team to not only deliver the service, but also go deeply with the validation of the NetConf implementation on their side.
Okay, cool. So I was pleased, and the team back home was very, was tickled to see that you use some of our other tools, like the NIAT or
Yep.
NetConf testing tool, and Dr. Ned and those kind of things. What could we have done differently, or what for the next time? How could we make things easier
You mean with
from an
this-
NSO perspective?
I think for the NSO perspective, from the NSO side, it was great that we could use this NetConf net builder.
Yep.
So we have a flexibility, and we can build the net on our own and just populate the models, and then it is working. And with the Docker net package, I think it was great. I was not aware of that, and I just the Cisco team advised me that there is this kind of capability, this package into the NSO that can help us with validation of the NetConf, especially when we are doing a development of the server. So it was great, and already I was in touch with Y,
Yeah.
who is in charge of it, and we exchanged what are some possible improvements for the tool. What was great, and if there's what's missing, maybe what could be a bit improved. And I think we had a quite fruitful discussion on that.
Yeah, I chatted with him earlier. He was happy to have the conversation and get the feedback. Well, thanks for coming up here, and thanks for a great session this morning.
Welcome.
And I think we'll wrap up shortly and head on out.
Okay, it was great to be here with you.
Thanks. So I'll be back again for day 3. We'll do another wrap up like this and wrap up the show. So thanks for listening, and have a great rest of your day.